The British public could be forgiven for thinking that Ed Miliband is a pathological liar and a numpty who sleeps in a high-vis jacket and a hard hat. He's had a shocker this morning. He was unable to account for £43,000 of taxpayers' money spent allegedly on refurbishing his own office.
British people have paid £130,000 to the government since you came into power for offices to be redecorated and have new furniture. Of the £130,000, £43,000 has gone to the Net Zero Department, DESNZ. What's it paid for, Mr Miliband?
Well, I've no idea, Nick.
So you've been in receipt of £43,000 of £130,000.
Honestly, come on, honestly, you know, look, I'm worrying about the nation's energy system. I'm trying to get the nation's energy system right. I don't know.
You're not aware of this refurbishment?
No, I'm not.
Have you got a new chair?
Well, it's not the only money problem he's got. He is refusing to answer whether or not he declared a £4 million donation to the Labour Party and a £99,000 donation to himself from an organisation that has links to the woman that he has just appointed as his climate envoy. We asked him if he declared that money, because if not, there would be serious allegations of corruption and cronyism, and he is refusing to answer the question. All he can say is...
The message from government is we've got to build this energy infrastructure for energy security, for good jobs, for lower bills, and indeed to tackle the climate crisis.
And that woman got the job on her own merits, of course. This isn't the only time that people have accused him of being a little bit dodgy. He said an independent report by the National Energy Systems Operator that completely vindicated all of his madcap radical policies. Well, he said it was independent. And then it turned out that Ed Miliband happened to be the person of significant control at that company, seemingly with the power to hire and fire the bloke running it. And it called into question how independent that report really was. Now, Ed Miliband refuses to comment on this when we put it to him. There's a theme here, isn't there? But, and I am at pains to stress this, the NESO website says that there is an operational separation between the minister and the company and that everything is completely above board and Ed Miliband couldn't do anything wrong even if he wanted to. But you can decide, can't you? Later today, Ed Miliband wanted to talk to you about wind turbines.
Talking for 1 minute as we walk the length of this 108-metre wind turbine blade without hesitation, deviation or repetition about clean energy. Chris?
Look at the size of this thing. This monster is going to be in the seas around.
He wants to classify wind turbines and solar farms as nationally significant infrastructure projects, which will strip residents, communities and councils of their powers to block, amend or delay green energy projects, which Mr Miliband wants to build across swathes of your countryside. Problems. Yesterday, just 8.3% of electricity came from wind. Gas was the main one. And this actually meant that if you have a heat pump, 3/4 of heat yesterday came from fossil fuels. Offshore wind, well, he wants loads of it. Problems. A site called Sea Green generated an impressive quantity of power in the first 10 months of this year, which earned its operators £70 million. But they were paid almost as much to switch its turbines off. At least £57 million. In total, we spent £1 billion turning wind turbines off so that it didn't surge the grid. Ed Miliband said he'd make your energy bills come down. Your bills are going up a lot. And now he's trying to backtrack on Radio 4 today.
They're not saying that there's a guarantee of any sort that bills will come down.
They're not saying it's a guarantee, but what I'm saying
they're not even predicting it.
We're confident based on what they are saying is it will lead to lower wholesale costs of electricity. If you look at their document, Nick, that's what it sets out, and it can lead to lower bills.
Perhaps, all based on one scenario about what gas prices will be. But you don't have any control over gas prices, and neither do they. This is guesswork, isn't it?
No, it isn't.
OK. He said that he'd create jobs. Those jobs do not currently exist, but there have been thousands of real jobs lost at steelworks, coal plants, oil rigs, etc. But the worst thing is his sums don't add up. He says that renewables will generate about £40 billion in investment, but those companies are just going to pass that cost on to you, the customer. And he's already spent the entire black hole, £22 billion, on carbon capture projects in the northeast. Oh, and now his own cabinet colleagues are turning on him. West Streeting threw him under the bus a little bit on Question Time over his role in not bombing Assad in Syria. In just one day, Ed Miliband has shown that he doesn't really feel like he needs to justify losing 43 grand of your money. He refuses to answer questions about alleged cronyism and corruption, and he doesn't seem to mind lying to you. Let's get the thoughts of my panel. Former Conservative MP Anna Firth, Director for the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity Stephen Wolfe, and the former Labour Party advisor Matthew Torbet. Anna, I'll start with you on this. Do you think Ed Miliband's all right?
I think it's deeply disrespectful to working people to laugh. You know, it's bad enough not to know where money is being spent in your department, but then to just laugh when £43,000 has just gone astray. I mean, £43,000 is a lot of money to working people. But the thing about Ed Miliband is he promised us we would see a reduction in our bills of £300. The only £300 we've actually seen since the election are the pensioners who've lost it. So, you know, he hasn't been being honest with us, and the problems that we've had this week just show us that his ideas that we can just flood the whole countryside with wind turbines and solar panels are not going to work.
Yeah, there are some issues when it comes to this idea that the Labour Party received about £4 million quid plus a £99,000 donation to himself from a company that has links to his current climate envoy. And she may well have got that job on her own merit. I mean, she seems like she is qualified, and I'm not trying to, disrespect the lady here at all. However, he doesn't seem to want to answer whether or not he declared that money, and that should be quite an easy yes or no question, shouldn't it?
Of course it should.
If he'd have declared it. That might be why he's not answering us. You know, I can't really offer up a...
It's down the back of his chair.
No, I think there's... I remember during this feeds back into optics and how the Labour Party's communications operation has been, quite frankly, dreadful for the last decade. At least, and certainly since I was involved, I would be pulling my hair out and continue to do so. I think it's the same thing of the Lord Ali donation stuff. Like, how could this look? You might be doing everything above board, but you've got to remember politics is a cynical business, and how will this look? So she might well be prominent enough, but therefore why have we not been full and frank enough?
Do you think that he might be slightly on the right track in terms of us needing to go green a bit, though?
I think you need to have... The problem is you've got to bring people with you for a start. So when Sadiq Khan got it all wrong with you, Les, I think I was part of a group that said you need to be offering a much more generous scrappage scheme. Not everyone can afford to just go out in the next 5 years and buy a green car or whatever else. You need to be offering people the right money to be able to do that, and that way you win people over. I think you do need to entice people with money and whatnot, but it needs to be varied.
And Stephen, just on the wind turbines, because what you really wanted today to be about, Ed Miliband, was wind turbines, and I'm starting to wonder whether or not he wants every day to be about wind turbines. but what he wanted was that, and his main ambition, it seems, is to change planning laws, etc., so that you can't object to wind turbines in your area. Problem for him being that we spent about £1 billion since the start of the year turning wind turbines off so that we didn't surge the grid, and then at times when we might need them, like yesterday, there wasn't enough wind, and something like only 8.3% of our energy, I think, was generated by wind. It actually works out more expensive.
Yeah, maybe he likes wind turbines because he's so full of wind. And he quite enjoys it. I mean, we just talking about it. I haven't only just recognised that he looks like Wallace from Wallace and Gromit. Well, lots of people have seen that.
Yeah, there's enough to criticise him here for without going off the personal
what I'm saying today is that was his Bacon moment again, when he was raised about whether he knew how much money he had in the chair. You know, and did he know whether he's got a new chair? What the point really about Ed Miliband is he's spending money that is not necessarily in the right direction. We've been talking about it in the green room. We're just about to launch a new nuclear station that cost us £46 billion, but it will heat with electricity 6 million homes. There are only 30 million homes or dwellings, as the government calls them, in this country. Therefore, for 5 nuclear power stations at £46 billion apiece, we would be able to actually provide electricity for all the houses in this country. We add another 2, we provide enough for all the businesses in this country. And I would argue that if we spent that 46 billion, we'd be able to provide free energy plus savings the costs across the spectrum. We wouldn't have to have wind farms. We wouldn't have to have solar panels. We wouldn't have to have carbon capture. All that money is wasted. And as Anna raised the point, 2 of those nuclear power stations at 46 billion apiece is the same cost as HS2. Right. Why don't we spend it on that? Then he'd be out of a job and we'd be quite happy with free electricity.
I totally agree with what Stephen's saying about nuclear is the way to go. What I wouldn't want is the government actually building these stations themselves, because we've seen what's happened with HS2. As soon as the government gets involved, the costs skyrocket, and generally you get a worse result. But Ed, you mentioned yesterday, but what about on Tuesday? On Tuesday, the wind farms could only power 3 to 4% of the grid. So 96 or 97% of our energy on Tuesday had to come from other sources. So we have to have a balanced energy supply in this country.
The question mark, I suppose, with you, would be whether or not Ed Miliband has gone so far down the rabbit hole and backed himself into a corner, really. Like, he might genuinely believe it. And earlier on, I said, maybe he's a pathological liar. Right, I was kind of joking there. I mean, I think there are things that he's been pretty fruity with the truth on, right, to say the least, and I have outlined those. However, I do also think that what we might be looking at here is the man who does genuinely believe, to the point of being borderline radical in this stuff, and is willing to for us all to make certain sacrifices in order for that to happen. And I wonder if we are hurtling towards blackouts, because what the heck do we do when 2030 rolls around and we're supposedly 95% reliable on renewable energy?
It's not going to happen.
And we haven't got the grid.
It's not going to happen.
But what does Labour do then about the blackouts, do we think?
That's if they're going to come down the tracks. I will not pretend to be any sort of expert on the climate. What I would say is that I always found Ed to be very arrogant, actually, I must admit, with my time in the party. But... Right. And he knows best, but at the end of the day, that's his attitude, and, that's the way I found him. What I will say is that I know one of his special advisors very well, and he's one of the most intelligent people I've met in politics, very normal, sort of gets it. I hope, therefore, that is the advice he would be listening to on this sort of stuff. But no, again, for me, you've got to have a very... The only thing that worries me about nuclear, though, is I remember Tony Benn saying many years ago, when he was in a similar position to Ed Miliband, some sort of energy secretary under Clement Attlee, is he said you could never find a safe way of disposing of nuclear waste, and we still haven't found one yet. And the second thing was, all that happened with the nuclear energy plants is they became bomb-making plants for the US, and Clement Attlee didn't bother to tell him, which is why he resigned. So I worry a little bit about relying solely, therefore, on nuclear, but I do think there's totally a place for offshore wind and other
Elon
sorts
Musk
of things.
being able to have rockets that we can actually dispense them out into space.
Just one final point just on this, Andy, though. If he's not across this money being spent on his own office, does that bode that well for us when it comes to him being in charge of our entire national grid? I mean, he couldn't say... He couldn't even come up with an answer. He was asked, by the way, the same question on an interview with Good Morning Britain as well, and he hadn't formulated an answer by then. I mean, has there been any redevelopment of his office for £43,000? Is this just a bloke who doesn't seem to care about wasting public money?
He either doesn't care or he's not the brightest bulb in the box, is the way I would see it. But I actually think this is a really, really serious issue. Yeah. I mean, we have to have cheaper energy. At the moment, we've got, some of the most expensive energy in Europe. We are not going to be a competitive global economy if we don't sort out our energy. So we have got to have a balanced energy approach. It's rushing at this headlong pace at net zero, when in fact we've already seen only this week that when the wind doesn't blow or the sun isn't out, we are going to have blackouts. It's a disaster.
All right, OK. Well, so, look, again, I will stress categorically that on that issue of the NESO and the independent research thing, their website could not be clearer that there is operational separation between Ed Miliband and their a particular set of research, and obviously, as we know, Ed Miliband himself is categorical in the idea that what he is doing is completely correct, and we will all reap the dividends in the long run.
Can I issue one last bit of advice to Ed Miliband? Don't ever laugh during an interview. I used to hate, from a comms point of view, you come across so condescending, so out of touch with people that are struggling. I hated it when any boss of mine did that. I said, don't ever do that again.
43 grand is more than the average annual salary.
Absolutely.
Considerably more.
And to say that that's just gone, poof, that's just gone.
I do think there's a bit of gotcha journalism of trying to catch me out figures, but either way, don't laugh. Just say don't.
Maybe you can't just take a joke.
Maybe. There we go.